What is going on? I want to welcome you from F-Court. Happy NBA trade deadline day. All fans across the league, but especially the Pistons fans. As you can tell, my cat's so excited, he's literally waiting at the window for Troy Weaver to do something. So, with that, let's talk about what you came here for, which is a preview of today's action at the NBA trade deadline. One thing that has thrown a major wrench into the Pistons' plans, and I would say everybody's plans, is the Kevin Durant trade that transpired last night. I woke up to it this morning, and I think just like everyone else went, holy, because what the heck? Kevin Durant traded? I mean, and it's just crazy, too, because, it's Matt Ishbia, right? Of all people, Michigan native, former Michigan State walk-on, owner of United Wholesale Mortgage, Matt Ishbia, him coming in the first 48 hours, trading for Kevin freaking Durant. Crazy. So with that, there's a natural domino effect. And that domino effect is what the Brooklyn Nets are going to potentially be doing today, because in that trade, they were able to get Cam Thomas, they were able to get Mikhail Bridges, but now they have Bridges, they have Thomas, they have Dorian Finney-Smith, they have Jay Crowder, they have Yuta Watanabe, they have an overabundance of 3-and-D wings, which is exactly what the Pistons need. Now, one thing to note is the Pistons might not necessarily go and pull the trigger on a trade like that today, because they might want to see what this roster can do for the rest of the season, might not want to give up too many assets at this time, but also one could make the argument that you wouldn't want to mess up your lottery odds going into the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, which would be a valid argument. However, if you would have the opportunity to go and get a guy like a Mikhail Bridges, possibly, I mean, you most certainly make that phone call and see if he's available. According to Michael Scotto, it appears that the Memphis Grizzlies have called, and apparently several teams have called about the availability of Mikal Bridges, but he is not the only major chip that is on the board. There's also OG Anunoby from the Toronto Raptors. I don't think that's a chip that the Pistons have particularly been interested in. I think he's going to go to a team where they're looking to try and contend this year, but also at the current time, with the Pistons, the big chips to fall, one of them is Bojan Bogdanovic. And the latest, via James Edwards III from The Athletic, our favorite Pistons beat writer here, the teams with serious interest with Bojan Bogdanovic are the Lakers, the Knicks, and the Bucks. Whether Bojan has actually moved today or not, we will see. However, I would wager that the Lakers are going to be much more desperate after Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving both are now in their conference. I would wager that, especially after adding a guy like D'Angelo Russell, guys like Jarrett Vanderbilt, Michael Beasley, ramping up their wing depth, I'm sure they're going to want to get more shooting and offense as well. I feel like they would see Bojan as a guy that would now be a missing piece and a guy that could take them over the top and to the next level. That would be interesting to see what they would do there. I'm sure Alec Burks is another guy that's going to get interest as well. It's interesting because James said last night on the broadcast, look out for Milwaukee. And I think especially now looking at the balance of power and the way that everything's gone in the West, and also how much easier the path has gotten in the East now, because you have to remember the Brooklyn Nets a week ago had Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on their team. They looked like the way they were playing, if they were healthy, that they could potentially contend. The Eastern Conference a week ago was way different than what it is now. The Brooklyn Nets are now a fire sale, everything must go rebuild team. And that just made the Milwaukee Bucks path that much easier. You can make the argument that now they really only have to go through the Philadelphia 76ers, the Boston Celtics, and you could maybe argue the Cleveland Cavaliers, but you could also make the argument that they're maybe a year early in the contending phase. However, there are certainly a lot of moves that can be made. I know that Boston after they were talking about potentially going and getting Kevin Durant. Now that hasn't happened, I wonder if they're going to stay packed with who they have, or I wonder if they're going to potentially try and be more aggressive. I think Memphis would be stupid if they didn't go and do something, because they, especially after Josh saying, we can handle the West. No, not anymore. You can definitely not handle the West anymore. So I think the Pistons are going to be receiving a lot of calls today. And I think with the way that recent events have transpired, I think Troy Weaver is going to be pulling the trigger, and I think some trades could very well happen today. So Nerlens Noel is obviously another guy to look out for. I know the 76ers have been linked to him. I know the Dallas Mavericks are going to probably want another backup big, especially with the current depth that they have. They're going to want improvement on the defensive end. I know Alec Burks is someone that the Pistons have expressed interest in extending, but again, I feel like it's another situation with Bojan where if they can get a good offer on the table for him, then I feel like that's something that they would just, be stupid to not pass up on. And I also feel like with Sadiq, I feel like the closer we're getting to the deadline, I know a couple days ago that he said that he would probably be the most likely person to be traded, but at the same time, I just feel, to me, the closer we get to the deadline, I just feel like he's a chip that there's no reason, at least before the 3:00 deadline, in my opinion, to trade Sadiq Bey at this time. But this is a market where we know already that the Pistons were trying to be active and make potential things happen. We know that the Pistons were talking last night to the Portland Trail Blazers about the possibility of Cam Reddish. Unfortunately, they were a little bit too late because the Portland Trail Blazers came in and traded Josh Hart in exchange for Cam Reddish and a first-round pick. So with that, the Pistons were not able to go. And I think Cam Reddish would have been a really solid addition. I think it would have been another really good reclamation project, or at the very least, just a flyer just to see what you have, see what exactly is there. Because, let's be frank, everywhere he's gone, he just, for whatever reason, hasn't gotten the opportunity. He hasn't gotten the playing time. He hasn't gotten the stretch. And we know that there's talent there. We've seen from his college days, Cam Reddish is a bucket. He was being talked about alongside the big three of Duke. It was him, it was Zion, it was RJ Barrett. They were supposed to be the three guys that were going to come in and all take over the league. He was supposed to be, a solid piece and someone that the Atlanta Hawks were going to use as like a core piece alongside Trae Young. Now he's on his third team. We'll see what happens. Well, maybe Portland is the place where he can make it work. Maybe Chauncey Billups is the right voice that he needs. Maybe this could be just like every other situation, and we realize why Cam Reddish was getting traded to all these other situations. But the ultimate thing is that Troy Weaver has a lot of leverage now, because now that a lot of teams have been loading up over the past week, there are going to be some teams that are going to be more desperate to get themselves in a better situation to, contend for the play-in, contend for the playoffs, because everything has just changed. If I'm the Sacramento Kings, I'm making calls. If I'm the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm scrambling to make calls. If the New York Knicks want to keep, still be in the playoffs and keep being relatively interesting, it sounds like they're making calls. Like, I think the Detroit Pistons going into this deadline have to feel very optimistic about the power that they have. And the other thing is they can still make moves and they can still do something after the deadline. They can still do stuff in the summer. So ultimately, I think today is going to be a really fascinating day. I think it's going to show a lot of what Troy Weaver thinks about the current roster that we have right now. I think it's going to show just how dedicated he is to guys like Bojan and to Alec Burks. But also, I think it's going to show what direction this roster needs to go in going forward. I think this is going to answer a lot of, all right, well, these are the obvious roster holes that we're going to have going into the offseason. These are the assets and chips that we're going to have moving forward. And, ultimately, if he does trade Bojan and Alec Burks, I'm going to be fascinated to see what this team looks like going forward, because, man, if it was bad before, it could be fascinating going down the stretch. So with that, I would love to know what your guys' thoughts are on the trade deadline thus far. I would love to know what players you would like to see the Pistons target before the 3 o'clock deadline, but also be sure that you subscribe to the channel and you have that notification bell turned on, because at some point tonight, we are definitely going to be going live, dissecting everything that's happening through the trade deadline, everything that's happened up until now, all the deals that are coming in at the 3 o'clock hour. I think this is going to be one of the craziest trade deadlines in the history of the league. It already is, and it's not even 11 o'clock Eastern time as the time I'm recording. This is insane. This is pure madness. And I would wager that Troy Weaver is going to have at least some role in it. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.